Welcome, 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 welcome. I am here with none other than the one, the only, Michael Schratt. Oh, yes. We are going to be talking about some case literature. Michael's an expert on UFO case history and doing research on this kind of stuff. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Michael. What do you got for us today?
Well, Jeremy, it's good to be with you. Tell me how you've been doing.
I've been doing good, man. I've been back to work, taking a couple jobs on. I've actually, construction's so busy right now, and there's such a lack of guys. I've been throwing in, crazy numbers out there, and people are like, no one's calling me back. Fine, So it's like I throw numbers out there like I don't even want to do the job, and I'm getting them. So it's good times for me, man. I'll take it while I can, but I listen to podcasts and everything to try to catch up on all the great news that's going on with everything. It's like daily updates, it seems, until this. I feel like until this report comes out in June, we're just going to be getting like trickle, drip, drip, drip,
Correct. Yes.
Wow, we only got 25 people. Let me jump on here and share the link on Twitter and Facebook and see if we can't get some more people to join in. But yeah, let's talk about what we got going on here today. You got a presentation here for us.
Yeah. So what I did is, after looking at all these cases, for the past 30 years, these patterns keep developing. I keep seeing the same features on these craft, like pipes and cylinders. I'm seeing these prongs and protrusions, and it keeps on showing up again and again after so many different dates, so many different locations, so many different eyewitnesses. They keep reporting this same feature over and over again. So I got to the point where I've got to put this together in one place, and I'm calling this Points, Prongs, and Protrusions in UFOs. Today's date, 5/27/21. So that's kind of the lecture title here that I want to go over.
Sweet.
Yep. All right. So if you're ready, I want to go ahead and start with the first case here, and I'll move along. So this is November 20th, 1956, Danielson, Connecticut. Now, the actual case took place 12:45 p.m., which would have been in the afternoon. Now, we've illustrated it kind of in the nighter time so that you can actually see the lighting pattern here. But this craft was 25 feet across. And credit has to go to the late Colonel Wendell Stevens, because he's the one who was able to archive this information. I got a copy of the original sketch from the primary eyewitness, and that's how we developed this case. So she was hanging up clothes on the laundry line. Her kids were asleep. All of a sudden, she sees this lighted dome, about 25 feet across in diameter, approach her location. It dipped down, nearly hit the clothesline, kind of went into the vertical, hovered over the house, moved off to the left, almost hit the chimney, then kind of like slowly moved down and was about probably 15 feet off the grass area that she was right in there. But she got a direct view below this craft looking up to the bottom of it. And so we've done this here, and credit goes to Tom Bogan for doing the illustration. But what this thing was, and I've called this the flying vanity light, because it had 24 light bulbs. They were all rotating, that had different colors on them. But then she also described that you could say that there was a donut connected to the bottom of these sockets, a total of 3 on each of these quote unquote lights or sockets that she described. Now, we've done an enlargement here. So I want to ask you, Jeremy, what does this remind you of when you look at this?
It looks like a, like one of those switch yards, when you see a switch yard for a transformer yard for power transformers and stuff, they have these things at the end of these units where those basically those yellow discs that are there, those are insulators, and it's basically so that it's a way to insulate the end of the cable, and there's usually something that holds power lines on the end of it and it keeps it well insulated. That's usually generally what that reminds me of. I forget what it's called.
So what she's describing here is a cylinder with a ball at the end of it, and then there were 3 rings or donuts, and each donut was separated by a black band. And then she said on the bottom of each of these donuts, it had this Aztecian lettering or inscription. It also looked like something that you would see on a Peruvian rug border or an Inca pottery. That's what she described this as. This is her original sketch from the report. There's also a 3-page report that goes with this. And you can see her drawing here. She did a really great job for someone that was trying to duplicate the Aztecing on the bottom of these donuts here.
Okay, I found the term for it. Okay, I'm going to post it here in the live chat so people know. This is called a lightning arrestor.
Okay.
Interesting, huh?
Yep. So then here's my drawing of what this thing actually looks like. And I've done an enlargement here on the right-hand side on the upper corner showing you this ancient Arabic language or Peruvian Oriental rug border. Okay, so this thing was silent. And she also mentioned that the bottom of it was rotating. And I thought, okay, what does this actually look like here? Well, it looks like a Tesla coil, right? You've got the primary coil, you've got the secondary coil, which would be the cylinder, and then you've got the ball, which is called the top load. That's perhaps what we're looking at here. And then you can see here, this donut is the top load as well. So the components, they match what we can see in the industry here. They're absolutely matching. So here's the layout here. So you've got the primary coil on the bottom, you've got the secondary coil, and the toroid or top load here on the top. So this could be what she was seeing.
It could be like a three-stage Tesla coil too. That could be another, a coil on a coil on a coil on a coil. But it's again, it would also make sense with a surge arrestor or a lightning arrestor because you're dealing with the super high voltages and and they're kept at a distance. So
exactly. So I'm just making the correlation that we could be looking at a man-made technology using technology that's well developed. Absolutely off the shelf, well developed. Okay, moving on. March 23rd, 1966. Now, this is my favorite Project Blue Book case. It was about 5:03 in the morning when an electrical engineer by the name of Eddie Laxton was working at Shepherd Air Force Base. He's driving down the road. The sun is just coming up, so it's still kind of dark out. And all of a sudden, he comes across this strange craft that is landed perpendicular to his way on the road. He stops the car, he gets out, and he's looking. First of all, he sees this. Some have described this as looking like a fish or a perch. Others describe it looking like a bowling pin at a bowling alley. It was 75 feet across, 8 feet tall. At the very forward section of it, it had a bubble transparent canopy that looked like it came off a B-26. It was sitting on this pogo landing gear legs, something that you might see on a lunar landing gear. And then it had 2 high-intensity beaming spotlights going forward and then 2 shining down. Just after that whole group, there was an air stair with the door open and a man. I want to repeat this. There was a man. He was wearing 2-piece green military fatigues. He had a baseball cap with the top turned up, so the bill was turned up. He was shining a flashlight on the bottom of the craft. Just above him, Jeremy, there was a spire that swept back and terminated to a 12-inch diameter ball at the end of it. Now, that's the part that I really want to drill down on because this is something that pops up.
12-inch diameter.
Yeah, 12-inch diameter ball at the end of the spire that looks exactly like the vintage electrical trolleys in downtown San Francisco years ago. They had this spire that came off the top of it that made connection with the wires on top. So that was the electrical trolley. Now, below that, there was another porthole on the starboard side of the craft. Aft of that porthole, which was divided into 4 equal pie segments, was written, and I kid you not, this is official Project Blue Book, not me saying it, Project Blue Book. The black letters written vertically, TL4768, written on the side of the craft. Also, there were flight controls, or quote unquote, what looked like flight controls at the very end of the craft, but were way too small for any kind of aerodynamic flight. Now, when the gentleman who was wearing this green fatigues, he also had on his shoulder those rank bars, like an admiral, there were these V-shaped chevron ranking bars on his shoulder. When he saw that he was being watched by Eddie Laxton, he immediately ran up the air stair doors. He closed the door. And then the report says that there was a high-pitched drilling noise. That's something that pops up again and again, this high-pitched drilling noise. Then this whole thing levitated off the pavement, sat there for about 30 seconds, and then it says it took off like a spark on a grinding wheel and made no sonic boom. This is back in 1966. So, yep, what I've got here, this is his original sketch. This is Eddie Laxton's original sketch. Now, you look at the dimensions here, it's 75 feet across, right? And then the dimension on the right is 8 feet. So if this is 8 feet and the overall length is 75 feet, we're way out of scale here. This drawing needs to be stretched way to the left.
80 feet. Well, they didn't have paper long enough, probably.
Could be. So what I did is I spent the whole day looking at this drawing, reading the report, 12-page report that I got from David Marler. He gave me the really nice blue book report that describes this in great detail. So then I got to here. This is the updated version right here. You can see the length has been corrected now. And you can see on his shoulder, it had these, you can call them military rank symbols. So again, it's just screaming, Jeremy. It is screaming man-made technology, like on every level here.
1966.
Man-made technology. And if you look at the reference works and the history of gravity research in 1954, October 1954, it looks like they made a breakthrough. And 55, 56, 57, all of these newspaper clippings talk about them working on gravity, trying to crack the gravity barrier. So it checks out with the newspaper clippings. It totally checks out. All right, so here's the.
I keep hearing like, are you rubbing your hand over the microphone? Because I keep hearing like.
I'll just make sure I'm not on that at all.
It's not me, so.
Yeah. So here's the report here.
There it is. Whatever you just did, right there.
That's on the other side of the wall here. We'll just have to roll with it. Observer spotted object parked on highway in front of his car, and they describe this in great detail. So just want to let you know that this is, again, a Project Blue Book case. You can go to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. and pull it up there as well. Okay, we're going to move to the next one. So where do we see these components? Well, if you look at the spark gap mechanism on a Wimshurst generator, you see this same thing again, Jeremy, this pole with the ball at the end of it, this spark gap. And then with the positive and negative plates on the counter-rotating Wimshurst generator discs, that could be the result of this high-pitched drilling noise. Something was spooling up, which caused that high-pitched drilling noise. I'm just putting it out there because that's what we're seeing here with this generator. What are your thoughts on that, Jeremy?
Yeah, it always seems to be like that. That same frequency too. That high frequency. High pitch. Yeah, it's like
before these craft depart, almost every time they make this high-pitched drilling noise, like something is engaging, something is spooling up.
It's interesting how like it charges up and then it goes off the ground. It floats there for a second and then it sits there. It's almost like it's plotting its course to go somewhere else. Then it just takes off. Maybe it has to get up to charge or get up to and then
it has to build a charge. It has to spool something up. Like why don't we hear the high pitched drilling noise after it already started levitating? But that's not the case. We hear it before and it keeps on coming up again and again. So something is being spooled up inside this craft. And then once they get that going to a certain RPM, then they can lift off, but not until that time. So again, that screams man-made technology. Okay, so
Chris, that to answer his question real quick, it's not a Van de Graaff generator. It's a Wimshurst machine. It's similar. I think it predates the Van de Graaff, but it's a similar concept. So,
and this diagram shows you the spark gap, which could be what we're looking at with these craft, where they have this ball at the end of this cylinder that keeps popping up again and again. Okay, so now just to let you know that I'm not making this up, Here's the Daily Oklahoman, March 1st, 1971. So I want to give my sources of where I got this. That's the illustration they came up with in the newspaper clipping. But then look what it says here. Object sighting now rude, Eddie Laxton. So even the primary eyewitness regretted ever even talking about it because he was ridiculed. And that happens again and again. And if you think about it, it actually adds to the credibility of the case that he regretted even talking about it. So there is, a historical legacy and paperwork to at least back up. And I will mention that there were truck drivers who saw it as well on more than one occasion. So he wasn't the only eyewitness. It's very interesting. Okay, so let's move on to this. And I have these per date here. And I want to switch to the 2004 U.S. Nimitz Tic Tac UFO encounter. We've heard so much about this. And you kind of play a role in this too, Jeremy, because when we went to the Gray Barker collection in Clarksburg, West Virginia, that's where we pulled up the Our Space Age auto binder reports. And within one of those reports is this case right here. Wycombe, Pennsylvania, March 1967. Don Anderson, this is March of 1967. Don Anderson of Wycombe, Pennsylvania, in daylight, saw a gigantic Zeppelin hanging motionless among the clouds with 6 strange booms on its top. And then if you look further, it says riveted seams. And then you can see the 6 booms with a 90-degree angle to them with, again, these balls at the end of them. And if you look at the high definition Nimitz F-18 film footage, it also has these 90-degree booms coming off it too. So this is predating the Nimitz by decades. It's already here with the rivets as well. Here's the drawing that shows you the 3 view and also the isometric view. I've got the riveted seams here. Predates Nimitz encounter by decades. Electrical probe. We could be looking at twin opposing spark gap mechanisms as early as 1967. They already had it. They already have done it. The seams just give it away. The riveted seams give it away. We're talking about a man-made technology here. There's nothing alien about this. They have
It's
done.
Got to be a UAV too. They had UAVs and they were experimenting with unmanned aerial vehicles like long before these drones of these present day drones came out. But man, how easy would it be to hide one of these things? You just link up some wires and you just sit it next to any building and it looks like a propane tank.
Could be, but the fact
how big is this thing? How big across is it? How long is it?
Approximately 25 feet across.
25 feet.
Across. Yeah. So then here's the color illustration. But then when you do the side-by-side comparison, you can see here that it's similar technology. Now, this one looks a little bit more seamless on the left. Of course, this is decades later, but this could have been an early prototype, the one that was seen in Pennsylvania back in 1967. And then through decades of research, they perfected the technology to what we see today. So we could be looking at Americans chasing Americans this whole time. Americans chasing Americans. That's
Wycombe, Pennsylvania. I'm just going to look up where Wycombe is. So it's a rural area, and it's north of Pittsburgh. I mean, north of Philly.
Okay.
So Philly and Valley Forge is where we think a lot of this stuff went down around that same time in the 60s. Right in Pennsylvania, Valley Forge and the GA and also the GE plant.
February 19th, 1968, Saskatchewan, Canada. The primary eyewitness was in the kitchen at the time, and she heard this shrieking, high-pitched drilling noise. So that's the second time we've heard this. She's looking through the kitchen window when she says a quote-unquote thing that was 8 feet across. That's what she called it. Not making this up. I've got the report here. This came from QFOS, which was 2457 West Peterson Avenue, essentially downtown Evanston, Chicagoland area, now under the jurisdiction of David Marler in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it's approaching her farm, and not only do we have the original sketch, but we have the original flight path as well. Now, it's definitely a CE2 because it caused physical effects. There were cows that were going crazy. The dog in the foreground here was burying his head into the snow and had his paws over his ears. I kid you not. That's what the report says. Now, as this thing got closer, she said that it was 8 feet across. The bottom of it looked like it was made up of multiple plates that had riveted seams, basically attaching this whole structure together. Around the outer circumference was approximately 6 to 8 opaque windows that were attached to a dome. And then on top of that, she said, this is what I love, it had a vent or grate-like register, like you'd see on a heating register. And then on top of that, there was a TP structure that went up to a prong with what looked like a baseball on top of it. So that's the third time we've heard this now. Here's the enlargement of what this looks like. So again, Jeremy, we could be looking at a spark gap mechanism on this craft as well. Here's an enlargement of the seams and the plates, the rivets. That's what she's describing here. And then if you look here at the bottom, if you look at the midpoint of this, where you see her house, that's where she saw this. And this whole thing is oriented north. So just south of her farmhouse is where this thing made about 3 orbits around the pole. If we follow the dotted line, it made a hover point here. Then it went over the grain bins, circled over to a couple of 3 wrecked cars, then moved northbound, made an orbit around the tractors, then made a northwest maneuver around trucks here, went around the pump, came up toward the right. So this is northeast now, where the brush was, made an abrupt 90-degree turn by the hedge, and then departed the area. So that's the flight path. So when you have the flight path, you've got a drawing, and you've got a 3-page report. It's a real case. It's a real.
But that flight path's super interesting, especially if it's drawn to proportion with the. And I mean, obviously, if it. Do you think it was perfect circles that this thing made?
It sounds like it to me. She said it was under intelligent control and was making 3 orbits around that pole, and then it started this hover maneuver. So whatever this thing was, it was intelligently controlled. Here's the original drawing that went with it, and you can see this great work in this heating register on the top of this craft, and this ball with the prongs. Okay, here's their original shaded drawing. And then this is my AutoCAD rendering based on the original sketch. So we'll just go around here. 4 legs supporting vertical shaft upon which mounted a golf ball size sphere. I've got an enlargement of the plates and the rivets on the left hand here. And then the 6 ports resembling frosted glass, arch-shaped and non-transparent, approximately 7 to 8 feet in diameter. This is back in 1968. So someone was flying this craft that had rivets, that had this high-pitched whining noise, almost like the 1966 Temple, Oklahoma case that we just talked about. So now we've got 2 of these cases that are adding up here. The timeline checks out. This is just a couple of years after the Temple, Oklahoma encounter. Okay, moving on. October 9th, 1972, Long Island, New York. How far away from this is where you are, Jeremy?
Long Island? I mean, if you don't have to go around Block Island, I mean, Nantucket Sound. What is it? Long Island Sound there. I mean, you have to go driving. It's quite a distance because you have to go all the way to New York City. You have to go all the way to New York City unless you take a ferry across to Montauk, I think.
Okay.
So,
all right. So there were 2 primary eyewitnesses. It's October 9th, 1972. It's about 7:30 p.m. They're driving between Smithtown and Coram when it was the wife who was more bold than the husband. Now, what they ended up seeing, when I'm calling it a flying iron, approximately 20 feet wide, it was 30 feet in length. As it got closer to them, she got out of the passenger side, walked over to oncoming traffic, and was looking up at this thing. They both said, now the husband stayed in the car. He looked at it through the window on the driver's side. They both said it had 10 lighted windows that were rectangular in shape. So there were 2 rows of 5. There was a red light on the left side, a green light on the right side. This thing made no noise. But what's interesting, on the very end of this thing, Jeremy, there were 2 poles that stuck up. At the very top of these poles, there was a wire that attached the top of this thing. This is back in 72. Here's the original report from UFO Investigator 1973. So I'm asking the question, does this look, feel, and sound like an alien spacecraft? This looks a lot like a very early prototype. This does not look like anything that's 100 million light years ahead of what we've got. This looks like an early prototype of something man-made, a mechanical craft. It looked like a flying iron.
I would love to find the contractor or the, you know, the look. This is like what I live for, is to find the source of these things. Where are these things being flown out of? This sounds like Andrews Air Force Base because it's on that side. It's on that side. It's close to there. But you know, I like to research things geographically, and Google Earth is like a huge friend of mine.
Yep. All right. So we're going to continue now. Here's their original sketch. I also have the 12-page audio tape transcript where they drill down in excruciating detail on this case. This is their original sketch, and you can see the two poles at the back with the wire, and then the red light on left, the green light on right, and then the early part of the lights on the bottom that they saw. There was a bright pulsating white light at the front of this thing as well. And this is back in 72. Okay, moving on. This is a case I got from the QFOS archives, and someone had to go through all 50,000 cases. Now, it took me 3 years to get through that many cases, but I really did go through that many. It took a lot of work because these things were packed. Each file was packed right next to the other. You could not put a razor blade in between the manila folders. They were so packed tight. Anyway, if this one wasn't pulled out, we would have never even known about it because it's been buried there for over 40 years. December 26, 1972, Venezuela. Now, primary eyewitnesses were 3. So it was the father, it was the wife, and then their young daughter. They're on the top of their 14th floor apartment complex when they're looking off to the right. Now, the father knew that there was a commercial airliner that always came by at the same time, so he was expecting to see this thing. He looks off to the right and he sees this orange, lightish glow approaching him. So he thought, wow, the engine nacelle must be on fire or something. So he's expecting some kind of fire or a crash. As this thing got closer, this was no engine nacelle. This was approximately 80 feet long, elliptical shaped craft. It actually continued on its flight path, and then it made a 45-degree bank up and then continued on its way. He told his daughter to go next door to the neighbor's house and get a pair of binoculars, which she did. She came back, gave it to her father. He looked through the binoculars and got a very close look, Jeremy, at the components of this thing, which I want to go over now. Here's the drawing of it based on his original sketch. And you can see if you go back from the leading 1/3 of the craft, both on the left and right and the back end, there were these quote unquote protrusions that stuck out that looked like exhaust ports, like cast iron exhaust ports. Weird. On the bottom of this thing, there were 2 opposing hemispherical domes that had an electrode or a spark gap mechanism with a continuous blue arcing light or flash between these 2 electrodes. Now he said that when you look at these exhaust ports, he said that there were flames coming out of these exhaust ports, but they weren't flames like a campfire. They looked like some type of an electrical discharge or something electrical is what he looked. They kind of had this violet glow to them. We'll go to the next one here. Here's the
it's crazy because I've always said like this technology, the best thing to test it out on early on would have been blimps because, you know, they have a backup mechanism if your propulsion thing fails.
That's right. Here you can see the blue arcing going between the 2 electrodes that he saw very clearly. And then here you can see these lasagna noodle electrical discharges coming out of these quote unquote exhaust ports. So these prongs, these protrusions sticking out. This is not a campfire thing whatsoever. Now, when this thing passed by, there was about a 5-minute pause and then another one, absolutely identical to this one, passed by the same location. So he got to see 2 of these, Jeremy, not just one, but 2 of these. So very good case. All right, now next one. While I was working at Open Mines in Tempe, Arizona, this case came directly to me. And so I immediately spoke to the eyewitnesses. About 2 years ago, I actually interviewed them on videotape. Very credible eyewitnesses. This is a very good couple. And this is Santa Clarita Valley, California, 50 feet in diameter, summer 1978. Now, the husband, he had one of these long poles. If you look at the foreground of this illustration, you can see one of these poles that they use to clean the pools. He was cleaning the pool at the time when all of a sudden this 50-foot diameter dish-shaped craft hovers above him, virtually silent. But then he said on the bottom surface of this thing, this is what's weird, really strange. It looked like the bottom of Santa's sleigh with these rails or skis on it. That's how he described it. And here is the drawing that I put together from his original sketch. So if you look at the bottom view, you can see these ski rails. And then over to the right side view, you can see how it has this S-shaped hook to it that's embedded into the craft itself. It also had these strange, you could call it 4x4 rectangles that went down the concave section on the bottom of it as well. So here's the third case where we're seeing these prongs or protrusions coming out of these craft as well. So this is 1978, Santa Clarita Valley, California. All right, moving on. May 26, 1979, Colusa, California, very good case. Primary eyewitness was watching television. It was 11:30 p.m. at night, and all of a sudden the air conditioner goes out. Then the television goes out. So he gets out of the couch, walks back to the circuit breaker box, opens it up, thinking that one of these circuit breakers might have popped. And the next thing he knows, Jeremy, the hair on his arms, the hair on his chest, the hair on his head not only starts standing up, but starts crackling. He looks up and he sees this 140-foot diameter dish-shaped craft hovering above him. It had a dome on top that had these ridges on it that looked like a lemon squeezer or like a juicer, an orange juicer. On the bottom of it, it had these conduit pipes that had frayed edges coming or dangling down from the bottom surface of the craft. It had two prongs on either side. And then he said, as he looked off to the left, he could see a similar craft that had the same shape, but was half the size of this one. And it was pulling power off the 500,000 volt power lines, causing them to become cherry red. So it was a CE2 case. Right off the bat, it's a CE2 case. So at this point, the prongs that are coming off from the bottom of this thing, they retract 90% into the bottom of the craft, and then a door pops open on the right and left side of the craft. And out from this door comes these gooseneck lights that are shining down. At this point, he's getting terrified. So he runs into the house. And here's a drawing of what it looks like. You can see these conduit pipes with frayed edges. You can see the prongs on either side, and then these gooseneck lights with this ribbed juice squeezer dome on top. He wakes up his wife. He wakes up his two kids. They go to the end of the room. They open up the blinds, and they see that large craft in the center. It's flanked on either side by two smaller craft. They're pulling power off the 500,000 volt power lines, causing them to become cherry red. Then he said that the large craft, the 140-foot diameter large craft in the center, went from a dead standstill to hovering over the low rolling hills in the background, about 27 nautical miles away. It did it in less than 1 second, and then repeated the maneuver back to its original position back in less than 1 second. So this thing had traversed over 50 miles in less than 2 seconds, Jeremy, and they made no sonic boom whatsoever.
Yep.
So someone's doing this. Okay, at this point, the large craft, he piles everybody in the truck. They're going 90 miles an hour down the road.
Where did you get this picture, man? This is amazing.
This is by Tom Bogan. We spent 6 months putting all this together. The large craft starts chasing the pickup truck. I kid you, it's in the report. It goes off to the left of the cab, over to the right, then back over to the top, over to the left. At this point, they finally reach the end of the driveway. They slam on the brakes. They all pile out, and they knock on the door of the neighbor's house. Two neighbors come out. So you've got the original father, you've got the wife, you've got the two kids, plus the other two witnesses. Six witnesses saw the tail end of that large craft depart at a high rate of speed. And this is all being done with basically no sonic boom. So someone's building this thing. It's definitely intelligently controlled, no question about it. All right, moving on. November 9th, 1979, Scotland case, 20 feet in diameter. This is a very famous case. You may have heard about this. Now, the primary eyewitness was with his dog. They were driving in a van. He was a forestry worker. They had just kind of turned this bend. They got out of the vehicle. They're walking over to look at some smaller pine trees, and he comes across this, what can only be described as a flying globe, 20 feet in diameter. It had this brushed aluminum sandpaper exterior texture. Around the outer circumference of the craft, there was a band, and on top of the band, Jeremy, it had these T-bars on it. So here's the fourth case of these protrusions sticking out that look like a T-bar. It's the only way to describe it. At this point, out from the bottom of this craft comes what I'm describing as U.S. naval mines. They look like orbs with prickly stickers coming out of them. They look like naval mines. And they were rolling toward the primary eyewitness. And he said that when they were rolling toward him, it made a quote unquote plopping noise. At this point, each of these naval mines attached itself just below his pocket on his pant leg and started pulling him toward the main craft. And then what happened, it's very interesting. He smelled what he described as brake pad lining, like when a 18-wheeler is going down a road and they're going down a hill and the driver slams on the brakes on an 18-wheeler, it had this brake pad smell to it. At that point, he completely blacked out totally. He woke up about a half an hour later. The craft was gone. The naval mines were gone. He had to crawl into his van, and then he drove about a mile back to where he was located. And so that's the 1979 Scotland case. But again, what are these prickly things doing at the bottom? And what are these T-bars? And how does that associate with the craft itself? These could be spark gap mechanisms. Something very much man-made is what we're looking at here. That's what it appears to be when you put this in conjunction with the other cases that we've talked about as well. Here's the Flying Saucer Review, November, December 1979. That's their illustration of what the craft looked like as well.
Oh wow! You found that too. Hey, before we jump to the next case, we're at a half hour. We got a bunch of people that just joined. I'm joined with Michael Schratt here, and we're talking about cases from history which resemble the Tic Tac, but also they have a lot of man-made or technologies and stuff, and stuff that we can see, rivets, things that look like appendages and stuff. So we're trying to analyze these in any way we can to determine if are these aliens, are these ours, are these top secret programs. Where was this case again? This last one.
The last one here, Scotland.
Yeah, Scotland. Oh, that's interesting. This one maybe makes me think it might be actually extraterrestrial or something. I'd be crazy if some space balls came after me in the forest. But the other case was super interesting. There's a lot of cases like that. We should assemble a whole thing on power lines. Cases of UFOs that take power from power lines. That would be another good presentation because there's tons of cases that I've read into and found in the history of these things coming for the power lines, and it'd be great if we could link that up. I was talking in the live chat. Someone said, "Man, people seeing the light flickering or the power. What was the power bill like that night?" And it's like, well, who's paying the power bill? It's the power usage that the power company. So I don't know. There's got to be something reported at the power company. You'd have to be able to go to the power company and be like, "Do you guys get outages from time to time? Do you get things that suck up like terajoules of power from the grid just randomly?" And it's like, I don't know, that doesn't make sense from an alien perspective too, is because these things, a lot of the ones that I think are more extraterrestrial are ones that go into water and stuff, and because I think they use water for fuel with cold fusion, because there's a lot of evidence that that cold fusion exists and that you can fuse. I think that's why they go in water a lot. That's my whole hypothesis there. But man, anyways, getting into all this stuff, I'm loving it, Michael. Your research is excellent, and anything you want to plug your channel real quick, and where people can find you, where they can reach you, where they can people said that they want to send you stuff, or what do you
just by email. That's the primary way to reach me. I mean, I've got things on YouTube, but generally email. Facebook works as well, but that's the best way to reach me.
Do you have a website or anything else?
I don't have a website. I'm small fry, so I'm just interested in maintaining an important part of our national history. That's it. That's the whole goal here, is to just maintain our history. Okay, so I want to move on to this next one. Now, this one came from Colonel Wendell Stevens as well. He had the original sketch that he did, and this is pre-CAD time all the way. So he was doing this with a compass and T-square triangles, all pencil. Did a really good job. This is my rendering of his original drawing. Anderson, South Carolina, September 11th, 1980. It was early in the morning. Primary eyewitness just saw this brilliant white light outside his window. He woke up his wife as well, and they saw a 100-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that was 40 feet tall. It had these square-shaped porthole windows around the outer circumference that had this violet light coming out of them. And then he said that there was a weld bead, that's the term they use, a weld bead, a perfect weld bead going around the outer circumference just above the bottom of this craft. But then, Jeremy, if I move forward here, I've got Wendell Stevens' original sketch. Now, there were other eyewitnesses who said that it made a buzzing sound like a beehive. So that's one. They also said it sounded like a Honda off in the distance. So probably like a Honda motorcycle. And we'll look over here on the different callouts here. Large hemisphere metallic object, measure 100 feet in diameter, a flat finish metallic silver, smooth metallic roll above the window, like a weld seam. That's what that was reported too. But what I want to point out, if you look at the bottom left here, pipe-like protrusion looked like 2.5 foot diameter tube with a red light at the end. So now we've got 5 cases of these prongs or protrusions coming out. Now, I don't think in this case, this was a tube where they were sucking up water, because it had a red light at the end of it. We generally don't see lights at the end of these tubes when it comes to these particular crafts. So at least 5 separate cases now of these prongs or protrusions coming out of these craft. Now, I went down and got the newspaper clippings as well, and they talked about how this thing was making a horrible noise. It woke up people in the local area. There were multiple eyewitnesses as well, and this is from the Times and Democrat, September 12, 1980. Noisy UFO wakes Anderson resident streaks off, and the police department saw it as well. So again, multiple eyewitness case. Moving on, February 3rd, 1983, Mobile, Alabama. This came from the April Bulletin. And the story is on this one. A woman was driving down the road at 9 p.m., Mobile, Alabama. She heard this booming noise. Her car started shaking, so she pulled off to the side of the road, stopped the vehicle. She got out of her car, looked under the vehicle, thinking the transmission may have fallen out. That seemed to be okay. She got back in the car, went another half mile down the road, and then off to the right-hand side, there was a clearing with a lighted section that was all lit up. She went further, and then, Jeremy, she saw this unbelievably shaped craft. It was about 210 feet long. It was 80 feet tall. It tapered back like a wedding cake. And we'll move up to the top here. The top had kind of a wraparound transparent section with these 5'10" humanoid-looking beings that were wearing these tight one-piece fitting flight suits. Below that, there was a transparent section. Below that, there were portholes that were circular that were completely lit up. And if you look further below that, you can see these 4 protrusions, Jeremy, sticking out of the front of this cap. They look like cannons, but I'm almost positive these were not a weapon system. Again, so we're looking at these protrusions.
I can say that must have been one hell of a disco party, but they're a little bit late, like.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Now, she also said that there was a door closing from right to left, and below that door, she said that there was what she termed, quote unquote, an asphalt road. I don't know how she saw the viewing perspective of that, but she said there was a black asphalt paved road right where that door that was closing from right to left. Now, on the left wall of this thing on the interior, she said she could see what looked like tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the left wall of this craft. Now, that's the same thing that we saw on the bottom of the Belgium Triangle, 1989-1990, It's the same tubes, pipes, and cylinders that were on the bottom of the Hudson Valley Boomerang, 83 to 1989, and the same pipes and cylinders that we see on the January 5th Southern Illinois Triangle case. So now we've got 4 cases of these tubes, pipes, and cylinders. Now, I always thought that that might be some type of cooling apparatus for a nuclear power propulsion system or a superconductor, because as you know, Jeremy, superconductors only become conductive when they're super chilled down to minus 274 degrees Kelvin. So they have to be chilled down with like liquid nitrogen. So that could be something that we're looking at there. Now, on the bottom of this thing, at the very bottom, she said that there were 2 transparent gondolas with these same 5'10" humanoid-looking beings that were wearing this white-colored, tight-fitting flight suit. And then above that, there was this cross-section that were made up of multiple 24-inch by 24-inch highly polished mirror reflective plates on the bottom of this thing. So we've done another rendering here that shows you the forward section of this craft. Now, if you look at what the configuration of this looks like, Jeremy, and she also said that the whole thing has rivets around the outer portion of the craft, which were assembling this thing together. And then she said that she was low enough to look through these portholes that were on the bottom side of this craft near the end. She could look from one side to the other. And she said that when she looked through these portholes, it looked like she could see cross beam and girder construction like a truss bridge. But then she also said that the interior of this thing looked like the bulkheads at a shipping yard somewhere on the East Coast where they were laying the keel of something, and they had these multiple bulkheads like a battleship being built. That's what this thing looked like. And the configuration looks like the secondary coil of a Tesla coil with the top load up front. That's what this whole thing looked like.
Yeah, again, where the heck were these things built and stuff? And I've been doing a lot of research into that. I determined there were a bunch of those hangars that were built during World War II for all our blimp fleet. We used to have a huge blimp fleet, and in 1961, it all got retired. So, and all the blimps went bye-bye, and there were, I think, like 4 hangars left. No, there's 2 in California. And actually, there's 5 on the East Coast, and there's 2 left on the there's 5 on the West Coast, and there's 2 left on the East Coast in Lakehurst, New Jersey. But I did all this research on them, and there was a bunch of them up until like through the 60s and stuff. And then in the late 70s, a bunch of the ones down in Georgia burnt down. But there was only a few of these big giant hangars, but that's like the only place you'd have a big giant facility big enough to build these things that I could think of. You know, anyway, I've been throwing ideas out there of where these things might have been built, and looking at, you know, the history of the Zeppelin fleet and the balloon technology is important, I think. So, awesome! Hey, we got $100 super chat from NM. Loving this next generation of content you're doing. Thank you for keeping it up and bringing it into the public sphere. Truth before belief. When are you going to set up a YouTube subscription or Patreon? I'm working on that. I think maybe this week or next week we're gonna launch that, and try to find a way to monetize this, because I'd like to grow my audience and also find a way to keep this going, you know, sustainably, and even expand it. You know, if we could make enough money to grow and really expand, and I might be working with some other bigger channels too in the future. So stay tuned for that, guys. And yeah, I said set up a Patreon and the subscriptions. Maybe we'll work on that next week. Thank you for that $100, and I'll definitely try to get the ball moving on that, man. I need to also hire an editor to help me make like short clips, because we got a lot of great content, but it you know, if you could just pick out the gems and summarize it, but it's all the gems, man. It's all gold. Just keep going, man. This is all gold, Michael. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem. No problem. So if you look at the front view here, you can see just above this door, you can see these 4 prongs sticking out. And on the bottom view, you can see them just at the front of the craft, just above the door. So just pointing out that she did see boxes, and then within the boxes were these prongs coming out. So this is case number 5 of these prongs. All right, now this one, I also got this one from QFO's archives as well. May 14th, 1988, Gresham, Oregon. Now, I've done it in the daylight so you can see this thing, because this thing took place at 9:30 p.m. at night. Now, I spoke to this woman on the phone. She sent me her original sketches, and she sent me corrections to my drawing. So it was good to actually speak to the original eyewitness. So they're driving down the road at night, 9:30 p.m. Victoria is her first name. I won't give her last name. She kind of had her eyes closed. And then the driver of the vehicle said, "What the heck is that?" She immediately kind of woke up. They both saw this very strange black-shaped UFO that had a flat bottom on it. She said that it had 12 lighted windows followed by 12 black windows. And then when the lighted ones were rotating in kind of this counterclockwise maneuver, the black ones would turn to light ones as this thing went around. Now, she also said that it, quote unquote, had a conning tower. That's her word. She said it had a conning tower, kind of like a submarine. And then on top of that conning tower, there were two basketballs that were red in color that were chopped down to 50%. And then it had a prong sticking up, which is now the 6th time we've heard of this prong or protrusion. So this is the drawing that I put together based on her original sketch. She signed off on this. And you can see this 2 foot by 4 foot prong rectangular pole that's sticking up with the red lights. Exterior of the craft was described as flat black, and then conning tower, this part remained stationary as the bottom section rotated. Now, I want to talk about what actually took place next. Now, as this thing was flying by, she said that it departed her area, and she gave me a chart of where this thing was hovering in relation to where they were driving. She said that there was a commercial airliner that was located and started its final approach to Troutdale Airport. What it did is it flew up to about 3,000 foot altitude. It parked itself below the left wing of the airliner. And then she said, quote unquote, when it got bored doing that, it departed at a high rate of speed. And she tried to find out other eyewitnesses that may have seen it, but she couldn't find anyone else. So apparently it was only these 2 eyewitnesses. But she did send me her original sketch with the flight path. So this is 1988, Gresham, Oregon. Moving on, I also interviewed this particular eyewitness, Chicago O'Hare Airport, April, May 2001. This took place at a place called the Ozark Hangar at O'Hare Airport. It was about 5:30 in the morning. It had previously rained, so the tarmac was wet, kind of had a little bit of a mist. And then there were 5 eyewitnesses. Now, in this view, you can see it kind of looks cigar-shaped, but the actual craft looking down was perfectly circular. So we're just showing you kind of a side view here. All of a sudden, this circular-shaped craft kind of flies above them. It was virtually silent. It had 12 rectangular slotted lighted windows on the side of it. There was a bubble transparency canopy up front, and now on the top of it, it had what looked like a closed circular section on top that might have been some type of entry porthole. But then he said, Jeremy, this is the interesting part of it. On the back of this thing, there were these octopus tentacles that came out that were moving like they were alive, and they had these 24-inch polished globe spheres attached to the end of these tentacles. And then on the bottom of the craft near the end was, again, this tripod prong protrusion with a golf ball or baseball size ball at the end of it. So now we got 6 of these cases.
Yeah.
Here is his original sketch. That's the Ozark hangar. You can see the antenna at the end, and then these tentacles or octopus tentacles at the back end here. Now, I recently spoke to him. We did another set of drawings and then another set of interviews, and this is the final rendering of what we came up with here. So this is very interesting because about 10 seconds after it passed their field of view, this thing made a 45-degree tip-up angle, continued moving forward, and then 20 seconds after it did that maneuver, they could all hear, all 5 eyewitnesses could hear this low rumbling in the background. It was a 747 on takeoff roll, and it had just passed where this craft went by. So 20 seconds earlier or a 20-second different timeline, we could have had a mid-air collision. Hundreds of people could have been killed, but this thing had passed by just prior to the takeoff roll of the 747. So this is April, May 2001, Chicago O'Hare. So now, how do we tie this together? How do we make the case that this is a man-made technology? I want to drill down on a couple of newspaper clippings to really talk about the historical legacy of gravity research. Now, it's fun that we should start here because this is, if you've read the book Zero Point, The Hunt for Zero Point by Nick Cook, somebody put this article on Nick Cook's desk and walked away with no description whatsoever. And that's what this illustration was. This is Young Men, November 1956. So, of course, what I did is I took it to the next level and got to here. So this is the 21st century rendering of that old article. So you've got this G engines are coming. There's no wires. There's no supporting structure. This is all vintage 1955 timeline here. And We've got that same guy here. So we want to bring it up to the 21st century. Now, within that article, they talk about Amarillo Daily News, November 26, 1955. And in here, we've got, quote, aircraft industry firms now participating or actively interested in gravity include Convair of San Diego, Bell Aircraft of Buffalo, New York, Lear Incorporated of Santa Monica, Clark Electronics of Palm Springs, and Sperry Gyroscope of Great Neck, Long Island.
Well, I know Sperry Gyroscope was involved with Otis Carr, and he's widely regarded as a UFO hoaxer, and he's also 1955, which is the same time period. So that makes sense, linking that up. But I haven't really done much research to link the other two. But that's interesting. Those are good connections. I didn't get that from the article. I have that article. I don't remember.
Amarillo Daily News, November 26, 1955. Centers where pure research on gravity now is in progress in some form include the Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton, New Jersey, and also at Princeton University, the University of Indiana School of Advanced Mathematical Studies, and the Purdue University Research Foundation. Moving on. November 26, 1955, headline, Science launches search for gravity's priceless secret. Search on for secret of gravity. Changes far beyond atom are the prize. The initial steps of an almost incredible program to solve the secret of gravity and universal gravitation are being taken today in many of America's top scientific laboratories and research centers. A number of major long-established companies in the United States aircraft and electronics industries are also involved in gravity research. Scientists in general bracket gravity with life itself as the greatest unsolved mystery in the universe. That's how they're terming this. So it really looks, Jeremy, like they were desperate to try to solve this gravity barrier. They were trying to crack the gravity barrier. And we're going to go through more of these as well.
I'm trying to think of who must have been in charge from Purdue. It would have had to been someone high ranking in the physics department. At Princeton, I know that it was run by John Wheeler, John Archibald Wheeler back in the 50s. So go on.
Okay, so New York Times, February 7th, 1957. Jesse Vernon Honeycutt, a director and vice president of Bethlehem Steel Company, declared, should the mystery be solved, it would bring about a greater revolution in power, transportation, and many other fields than the discovery of atomic power. For example, solving the mystery of gravitational force would be of tremendous import in the field of aircraft design, where the problem of fighting gravity's effects has always been basic. Okay, moving on. Amarillo Daily News, November 30th, 1955. Experiments seek means to fly planes outside of gravity. Industry gets busy on new space dream. The current interest in America's aircraft and electronic industries in finding out whether gravity can be controlled or canceled out, end quote, is not confined to imaginative young graduates of engineers and scientific schools. Aviation as we know it is on the threshold of amazing new concepts. The United States aircraft industry already is working with nuclear fuels and equipment to cancel out gravity instead of fighting it. Lawrence D. Bell. He was involved in the X-1 rocket. So you can see we're making the case here. They're talking about a revolution in technology, in transportation, in aircraft design, ways to cancel out the gravity. It's really sounding like they're desperate trying to do this.
This is interesting because we're almost seeing a repeat of that now with some of these scientists that have come out with like TTSA and Hal Puthoff and some of this other stuff that's being rolled out. I'm trying to like make sense of it all and was this hope? A lot of it was wishful thinking. I believe back then. I think the problem was a little bit more complicated than they realized back then. But right now with the technologies that we have coming out, I think we're able to we're almost there. So I don't know. This is interesting. I want you to continue with this case. Yep. I'm just throwing my inputs in as
that's fine. That's fine. So. And these newspaper clippings go hand in hand with the cases that we just talked about, because if you go back to 1966, the Temple, Oklahoma case, if they're talking about this in mid-1955, and then Eddie Laxton saw the craft with the TL4768 written on the starboard side of the craft, they already had, Jeremy, 10 years to work on the technology. So they already had a 10-year leap on it. Here's Inaravia, number 1, 1952. Air Force Atomic Engine Contract awarded to Pratt & Whitney. An Air Force contract for work on an atomic aircraft engine has been awarded to the Pratt & Whitney Aircraft Division of United Aircraft Corporation. The U.S. Atomic Energy Commission is cooperating in consideration of the nuclear energy phase of this work. So the Atomic Energy Commission is definitely involved in this as well.
That's like that's what Nick Redfern thinks is the Men in Black. Oh, by the way, is the AOE.
Okay. Amarillo News, November 29th, 1955. Spaceship Marvel, scene if science can outwit gravity. We talked about this here. Many in America's aircraft and electronic industries are excited over the possibility of using its magnetic and gravitational fields as a medium of support for amazing flying vehicles. I love this, which will not depend on the air for lift. Spaceships capable of accelerating in a few seconds to speeds many thousands of miles an hour and making sudden changes of course at these speeds without subjecting their passengers to the so-called G-forces caused by gravity's pull are also envisioned. Jeremy, this is exactly what people report about the flight path of UFOs. Exactly, word for word.
Well, this is also real similar to the Lockheed Martin research that was done by Caltech, led by Dr. Bernard Haisch, Haisch, and he talked about the same kind of stuff using 0 point energy and this idea of this idea of inertia as backfield EMF, and that if you can change like the frequency spectrum around things and you can basically alter the fields. And this is interesting stuff. I mean, I think it's advanced a lot since then, but I don't know, man, if they had it quite. I mean, they envision this stuff, but I really want to know more about the scientists. I need more scientists' names because I got to go find what and research their papers and see just how far along they were back then.
Okay. And so, all right, look what they say here. Amarillo Daily News, November 9th, 1957. The jet age is already obsolete. You old men of 25 or 30 years still plodding along in the jet age, wake up. Jet propulsion is obsolete. The Sputnik will shortly appear as crude as the wax wings of Icarus. I love the way they term this here. We are entering the age of anti-gravity space travel. Spherical craft made weightless and propelled by anti-gravity engines may soon attain almost the speed of light, 600 million miles per hour. This is not a dream. Since 1953, the Canadian government has been working on Project Magnet. At least 14 U.S. universities and other research centers are trying to crack the gravity barrier. Teams of researchers and engineers from 4 major American aircraft companies have anti-gravity designs and data on their drawing boards, proving that whatever goes up does not have to come down. Okay.
God, what a simple code name, Project Magnet, but I've never heard of this before. Man, this is great stuff. We're gonna have to get all the documents on it. Continue.
Council Bluffs, 11/27/55. Continuing on with the newspaper clippings here, we're just making the case. Conquest of gravity, aim of top scientists in U.S. One almost fantastic possibility is that if gravity can be understood scientifically, and negated or neutralized in some relatively inexpensive manner, it will be possible to build aircraft, Earth satellites, and even spaceships that will move swiftly into outer space without strain beyond the pull of Earth's gravity field. They would not have to wrench themselves away through the brute force of powerful rockets and through expenditure of expensive chemical fuels. Jeremy, they're talking about the death of rocketry here. They're already talking about it being over.
And who are these top scientists? Just I want to know, like, do they have names? No names.
It's a done deal. It's a done deal. They're already talking about that. It's going out of style. Jet engines, rockets, chemical rockets. It's all passé.
Why aren't they talking about it now? I mean, we have like such more like evidence of the technology like being in practical like production. I don't know. Let's continue.
It's the implication. The implications are staggering because if
they obviously thought it was true. Well, what led them to that conclusion?
Yeah.
It might have been something they recovered, say 8 years before this in 1947.
Because if this is true, Jeremy, the implications are absolutely staggering. Because if Eddie Laxton is telling the truth, and he really did see that craft back in '66, then when Neil Armstrong and Buzz and Michael Collins launched on Apollo 11 and landed, well, at least the two did, July 20th, 1960, they already had this completely perfected and down to the science. They didn't need liquid rockets, just exactly what this article is talking about here. They already figured it out. Okay, electricity for space exploration. Ryan Aerospace, February 1962, in their own literature, here's what they're showing. Within the next 10 years, electric propulsion will play a leading role in making extensive space trips possible. This is the craft that they're proposing. And this is from their own document, 1962. It's already a done deal. This is what they're talking about here. Now, Miami Herald, December 2nd, 1955. Engineers aiming to flout gravity. Elimination of interference from transspatial pull is goal. Okay, here's what they say. The Wright brothers proved that man does not have to be earthbound. Our next step will be to prove that we can operate outside the Earth's atmosphere. And the third will be to operate outside the gravity of the Earth. Lawrence D. Bell, inventor of the Bell X-1 rocket plane. He goes on, I firmly believe that before long, man will acquire the ability to build an electromagnetic contragravity mechanism that works. Much the same line of reasoning that enabled scientists to split up atomic structures also will enable them to learn the nature of gravitational attraction and ways to counter it. Grover Loening, who's the first graduate of aeronautics of an American university, he worked with the Wright brothers. So he was early on in all of this stuff. Here's the cartoons, Jeremy, that go with this article. I thought they're very interesting here. Maybe we're taking this too serious. 500 pounds. This guy is flying. So, even the satire of these cartoons are talking about this as well. Come on, gravity, let's harness you. Okay? So they're talking about harnessing gravity. Here's another one. Electricity was once a mystery, but we solved it. So here they're talking about solving electricity, mastering that. Then they're going to solve rocketry. They mastered that. Then they're going to solve the gravity thing. They're going to master that as well. So that's the third thing. Miami Herald, December 1st, 1955. Future planes may defy gravity and airlift in space travels. Scientists foresee speeds in thousands of miles per hour electromagnetism. Here we go. Scientists regard Earth today as a giant magnet. Many Americans' aircraft and electronic industries are excited over the possibility of using its magnetic and gravitational fields as a medium of support for amazing flying vehicles, which will not depend on the air for lift. Yeah, well, I would consider what Eddie Laxton saw blocking his road back in '66 an amazing flying vehicle, no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. Spaceships capable of accelerating in a few seconds to speeds many thousands of miles per hour and making sudden changes of course at these speeds without subjecting their passengers to the so-called G's caused by the gravity's pull are also envisioned. So we talk about that as well. Here's another cartoon that they talk about. Which way is up? So if you're able to conquer gravity, then you wouldn't have this mass problem. You wouldn't have this inertia problem. You could make these 90-degree right angle turns. You'd feel no G forces. You could go backwards. This is exactly what Gordon Cooper had talked about back in 51 when he was at his West German air base. When they try to intercept fleets of these flying saucers, they were making these 90-degree right angle turns. They could fly backwards. He could not intercept. This is back in 51. They already did it then. So who was involved in this? Well, none other than John Lear's father, William Lear. So we have a very dapper-looking John Lear on the left, and then his father, William Lear, on the right. What was he working on, right? Let's find out what he was working on. William P. Lear, this is all part of that same article, inventor and chairman of the board of Lear Incorporated, one of the nation's largest electronic firms specializing in aviation, for months has been going over new developments and theories relating to gravity with his chief scientists and engineers. He is convinced that it will be possible to create artificial electrogravitational fields whose polarity can be controlled to cancel out gravity. This is what William Lear is saying here. Quote, all the mass materials and human beings within these fields will be part of them. They will be adjustable so as to increase or decrease the weight of any object in its surroundings. They won't be affected by the Earth's gravity or any celestial body. This means that any person that was in an anti-gravitational airplane or spaceship that carried along its own gravitational field, no matter how fast you accelerated or changed course, your body wouldn't be any more feel it than it now feels the speed of the Earth itself. So William P. Lear is laying it out. He's talking about being within this bubble that you won't feel any G-forces. It doesn't matter how fast you go. You're not going to be, subjected to these G-forces that our pilots do. And
that's interesting because this is like, I remember how I'm going to post this right now. Are you aware of this? I'm going to post it in the live chat right now and also in the private chat for you. But we got from Stan Dio. We got the footage from Bonson Labs, in North Carolina, where Thomas Townsend Brown did a lot of his research, and we got that footage, and in it is John Lear's father. We showed it to John Lear, and he's like, wow, that's kind of, that's crazy, because his dad appears in it, and also in that video I posted the link. They talk. There's on one of the chalkboards. You can see written on the chalkboard is barium titanate. So it shows like they were working on this in the late 1950s. I think that research might have started in 1956, I believe, and culminated a couple of years later. But they can be seen celebrating and drinking champagne. So it looks like they had some successes with it. And I don't know. I just don't. I haven't seen enough proof from the physics standpoint of yet for wow, what this should be much more serious. It's like, man, there's some stuff that uses this apparently, the B-2 bomber and a lot of other technology, but they kept this really classified, this one key detail, and this is old stuff. Actually, this was declassified in 2009 under Obama. So
part of this has a lot to do with how much you trust your fellow human being, right? I mean, does it sound like Eddie Laxon was lying? Does it sound like the one in 56 was lying with the flying vanity light? I mean, she has no reason to portray something that didn't take place. She was just hanging up clothes on the clothesline. So we have to take a look at these eyewitnesses, what they describe, look at their testimony, and see if we can correlate that with other cases and come up with a pattern recognition. And it's happening. It's happening. We're seeing the same structure over different cases, different timelines from different eyewitnesses. They're all describing similar structure. These pipes and cylinders on the bottom of the craft, this low frequency electrical humming noise. We've got the high pitched drilling noise, these prongs and protrusions sticking out from reliable witnesses. So it looks like they have done something.
So do you think John Lear was involved in this research, that they figured it out, and that John Lear's John Lear's father was involved in this, and that John Lear was part of some kind of early disclosure to leak pieces of it out? I mean, it just brings open a whole nother can of worms if this is
I don't know if John Lear was, but it definitely looks like his father was.
Was he involved in anything else that you know of? Because you didn't mention any. I don't think you mentioned any specific companies that he was involved in. I mean, I know that we found him in the Bonson Labs video, so he visited that and was keeping up with Townsend Brown. But Townsend Brown was being, published in all the UFO literature, which we know John Lear was into, and it might have been his dad was into this too. So I'm not sure. I gotta find the connection. It's like we know that John Lear was like, he wasn't a CIA pilot, and his dad had some CIA connections and stuff too. So it's an interesting rabbit hole for sure.
There's more there. You can bet that there's more there. A couple more here. Miami Herald, November 30th, 1955. Scientists begin work to break gravity barrier. Scientists taking first steps in assault on gravity barrier, November 30th, 1955. Air transportation standing on threshold of new concept. America someday may be able to explore outside forces of gravity, December 12th, 1955, the Post-Crescent. The current interest in America's aircraft and electronic industries in finding out whether gravity can be controlled or canceled out is not confined to imaginative young graduates of engineers and scientific schools. So we talked about that. So basically, Jeremy, what I wanted to do with this presentation is show you what the eyewitnesses are describing, give you the illustrations, their original sketches, tie that in with the gravity research in the mid-1955 timeline of how the newspaper clippings are describing it, put those two together, and it looks like they made some kind of breakthrough controlling or breaking the gravity barrier. They had 10 years to perfect the technology. And then when you look at the 62, 62, 66 timeline, they implemented the technology in working hardware. That's what it looks like to me, Jeremy.
Well, this is the thing, Jeff, right? So Jeff's saying, hey, I recall, now he's legit. Jeff's asking. So this is like early John Lear. We're talking about John Lear's dad and yes, John Lear's upbringing. Okay, so he's definitely a CIA pilot, and then he comes out in the 80s when he first was on George Knapp and stuff. And then I really feel like after the whole Bob Lazar thing is when he started getting into a lot of disinfo. And I've criticized a lot of John Lear's later stuff, but we're talking about way before any of that. This is like 1950s. So we're going back in time a little bit here. So I just wanted to clarify that and keep that.
Sure. Sure. I understand. But Jeremy, thanks for giving me the opportunity to join you today. I just thought it was important that we really drill down on these newspaper clippings, because that's where I think the gems are. They just keep on talking about how rockets are obsolete, jet engines are obsolete. They're talking about a revolution in air travel and transportation and everything. This is what Gordon Cooper had talked about. He was very good friends with Daryl Miklos. I did a 2-hour interview with Daryl Miklos, and Gordon Cooper told him that, quote, we are 100 years behind where we should be. He was part of something called CAT, Center for Advanced Technology. They were bringing some of that technology out into the public domain. They did it in a public way. They did it through EPCOT, the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, where some of these technologies were highlighted. And just by going over the eyewitness testimony, it absolutely looks like they have working hardware. That's what it looks like to me.
That's amazing. Well, this is interesting. I don't agree with, all these perspectives until I have overwhelming evidence. You know what I mean? I'm kind of still a skeptic of all this stuff, but I really appreciate your research and the work that you've put together and shared with us. I continue to research the anti-gravity side of this from a, like a physics standpoint, and try to talk to, the experts who are involved in that, who've been involved with this research over the years, because we have all these guys now from DARPA and from, the top I pretty much reached out to all the top scientists that I can find. I think I found all the best relevant experts that I'm sure there's a bunch more we haven't talked to, and we're finding more all the time as we dig deeper and deeper down these rabbit holes and into this stuff. You find more people who are involved in this aspect of it, because it's all so compartmentalized. It's one guy knows one thing, and if you can connect the puzzle pieces, it really helps to have that overview. And the more we're digging down this rabbit hole and stuff, we talked to these guys who've been working on DARPA special projects for the past 40 years and stuff, and are they disinformation agents in the group? We have all these questions, because there's always somebody at APEC trying to disrupt stuff there, and okay, so before you leave though, Mike, we gotta get into this Mark McCandlish stuff, because you were close to Mark, and you have more information on this than anyone that I've talked to so far. And what's your take on this whole thing?
Well, it definitely looks like Mark took his own life, unfortunately, and that's what we're dealing with right now. I can't believe it's true. I really can't. I'm still shocked, because to me, he was a father figure, and some of the best parts of my life were when we did drawings together up in the hotel room. We would tape drawings on the side wall there, and I'd bring my reference material, and then he'd just start drawing, and it was incredible. It was a religious experience. It was one of the highlights of my life. So, yeah, I kept all the commissioned artwork. I have it in my archives, and to me personally, I consider his artwork like the Templar treasure. It's too big for any one man. It belongs to everybody. It belongs to everyone on this planet, actually. So it'd be great to showcase that somewhere. I don't know how, but somewhere, because it's very inspiring.
So I got a number of people who say that they don't believe that it was suicide, and that they don't think that he took his own life, and that they think there was some other nefarious forces involved. I just want to point out that there are people like Carrie Cassidy who did a report on this, and then I'm not sure if Farrell picked it up from her and just repeated the misinformation, but there were no hearings. There are no hearings related to this UAP task force. As far, we have numerous experts who could testify if there were hearings. But as far as we know, there weren't any, it wasn't like cases, people were comparing it to other past cases. It wasn't like George de Mohrenschildt, where he was, friends with George H.W. Bush and Lee Harvey Oswald, and he was set to testify before the Warren Commission. There's no hearings. There's no commission. There's no evidence. I just don't see the connection that people are trying to make here. And
I
also
agree with you, Jeremy.
I saw the same thing that happened with Michael Rupert, who unfortunately, he was a friend of mine, and I believe that he took his own life. I do not think that he was killed, even though I feel like they had the CIA had much more reason to kill Michael Rupert than they did Mark McCandlish. So I don't believe in that conspiracy theory one bit, and I don't entertain it for a second. That there was there's so many cameras involved, everywhere. They would no way that they could get an agent in there to go and and do that and blow his brains out and frame it and make it look like suicide and then leave. Just think about it logistically and think, try to I don't know. I tried. R.I.P. Mike Rupert, man, he was a great man, but the man took his own life. But there's still a lot of conspiracy theories about that, and also Gary Webb. There's that one I'm on the fence about, because man, the CIA did have tons of reasons to kill Gary Webb, and that's double. But there is a possibility that shot back double. It was a double fire because there was 2 bullet holes. They said the gun, but you can double fire. Mm-hmm. So it's possible that the gun double fired, and that was the result of the two bullet in the Gary Webb case. So there's a number of cases out there that we can compare this to, known cases and stuff. So
2 days ago, Jeremy, Steve Cambian on his Truth Seeker YouTube channel did a whole hour and a half dispelling all the myths regarding this event.
Steven did a good job. Steven, go watch Steve Cambian on Truth Seekers and check out that and stuff. Yep. We're gonna open this up to I'm gonna open this up. Michael, do you have time for a couple quick more questions and stuff?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm gonna open it up. There's a StreamYard link if you guys want to join in and ask any questions to our guests and stuff, as always. And yeah, Cambian rocked that, dude. He totally
did a good job on that. Yes, he did.
So yeah, I don't believe that and entertain that conspiracy for a second, especially when you look at these other cases of these suspicious murders that were related to you compare it with the circumstances, and it's just like we have so many people that could still testify, and they would have to kill everybody at the APEC conference and everyone who watches my channel and all everyone watching live right now, and there's no way they can stop this. Okay, at this point, I'm just gonna let people know there's no reason to think that they're gonna kill you, and that you should be afraid. There are legal repercussions for people that break their security clearances. What's up, Walter Bosley, man? Good to see you here too, man. Yeah. I hope you'll jump on and ask us some questions about these cases. I hope you caught all these great cases that Michael just went on a rampage, talking about all these things that look like man-made craft, and including cases that look like the Tic Tac, that one from 68, man, that looks like the Tic Tac. But man, if you think like they had Tic Tacs since 68, there'd be more sightings of those. And why are people instead seeing the Belgian wave and these TR3Bs? A lot of people think that's stealth blimp technology and all that that was going on at the time. Some of those UFO cases you showed us could have quite possibly been stealth blimp technology, including the disco ball there. So
okay.
I like that disco ball, man. I want to ride on that one. That's the best one. It's my favorite. See, Simon, you have any questions for our guests? Hey Bernard, what's up, man?
What's going on?
Thank you for joining. Any questions for Michael?
Much respect, Mike. I appreciate your work for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just going to close the door here. I'll mute myself for a second.
Right on. Well, Michael,
so I'm
Simon, are you there too? I don't know where Simon is, but
yeah, I just thought you were shutting down the YouTube stream, so I figured I'd switch over.
Yeah, maybe we'll switch. Maybe we'll shut it down and keep this off air for the Q&A session. Maybe we'll do that. All right, guys. So hey, thank you all for watching live and catching Michael's great presentation. And I don't want to drag this on too much longer because an hour and a half is a good length. So and once again, thanks to NM for that super chat for $100 and everyone else who donated and helped support this channel. That's much appreciated. Thank you all, and you help us grow. You help us do everything. So you guys are the real heroes here, and you are pushing disclosure. And again, don't let any of these people scare you with these false rumors. There's no reason to be afraid, man. We all need to band together and get more truth out, because our national security is at stake if more people don't become aware of what's going on with these technologies and the world and the future. So thank you all. Peace out.